So for those of you who are practicing here in person at retreat or online, it's such a joy to be with you here this morning. And for those of you listening in on the podcast, welcome. I'm Sensei Sōen Michael Brunner, a Sōtō Zen Buddhist priest in the lineage of Dainin Katagiri Roshi, through my teacher, Reverend Dr. Sojun Dayan Martin Roshi. And I serve as a founding teacher of One River Zen here in Ottawa, Illinois. We're a community that's grounded in the ordinary, just an ordinary, everyday expression of presence and compassion. And it's good to be practicing that this morning, as we did this morning in service. Ultimately, Zen practice has never been confined to the Zendo. Many of you see some of our outreach programs like Karuna Pantry, or maybe even a few of you have heard about David's Clubhouse that's about to open at the new One River Zen Community Center. I guess the question comes up for a lot of people, what is it in these service missions that seem to have, that we keep elevating, that seem to apparently have nothing to do with Buddhism? We are here, after all, to practice Buddhism, right? Isn't that what we do? This practice really isn't about cultivating an ideological notion of being, some perfected image of being a Buddhist or an enlightened person. Real practice is about being a true person, which only manifests when we show up as our authentic selves. When we allow that, the story we tell ourselves about I becomes very tenuous. We begin to see ourselves reflected in every aspect of our experience, not just in the dusty annals of our storehouse consciousness, in our own internal records of what's gone well in our lives, what's gone poorly, and the naughty and nice lists that we contain in there, right? Dōgen puts this very succinctly. He says, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the 10,000 things. You can cut to the chase on the 10,000 things. It's to become actualized by everything. Everything we encounter, everyone we meet. Yeah? Very beautiful words. And they're very profound words. But ultimately, they're just words. How do you actually practice this? How do we live this? There's a koan in the Shōyōroku. It's the 54th case. It's called Ungan's Great Compassionate One. That points away to this pretty clearly. It begins like this. Attention. Ungan asked Dogo, what does the great compassionate Bodhisattva do when she uses her manifold hands and eyes? Dogo said, it's like a man who reaches behind him at night to search for his pillow. Ungan said, I understand. Dogo said, what do you understand? Ungan said, all over the body are hands and eyes. Dogo said, oh, you've really said it. You've got 80% of it. Ungan asked, elder brother, how about you? Dogo replied, throughout the body are hands and eyes. Wonderful case. Very moving. So who is this great compassionate bodhisattva with manifold hands and eyes? Many of you will recognize her right away as Avalokitesvara, the bodhisattva of great compassionate. Her name means the one who hears the cries of the world, or looks down upon the cries of the world, not in a way of suggesting that she's somehow separate from them. Not as one who thinks about them, not as one who has a good idea about compassion, the one who hears, the one who responds. There's a story about Avalokitesvara. Apparently, She never vowed to rest until every being was freed from suffering. But as she worked, she saw the magnitude of the pain and suffering in this world. And her body literally shattered from the strain. Seeing this, Amida Buddha gathered the pieces and fashioned her anew with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. So she could see the suffering whenever it appeared, wherever it appeared, and respond instantly. Another variation of this legend that says that by sheer force of will, when she saw the magnitude of the task at hand, she volitionally grew those 1,000 arms so that she could be available. This story is more than just a story or more than just a mythical ornamentation. Yeah? Ultimately, whenever we talk about these divas and bodhisattvas, they're not outside. Yeah? There's nothing outside. So it's ultimately pointing right back to us. When we actually open to the cries of the world, it's very easy for us to feel some sense of impossibility, some sense of insufficiency, or some sense of there being an impossibility of being able to help everyone. Yeah. But compassion isn't about some cosmic scale or some weight of magnitude. It's not some notion of quantity. It's a qualitative act of intention. Compassion asks us to show up with whatever hand, whatever eye is needed in that moment. Dogen kind of likens it like when he says, it's like a man who reaches behind him at night to search for his pillow. It's kind of a strange pointer, but if you sit with it for a moment, yeah, and you think about it, you don't strategize in that sense, right? You don't create a plan. You don't think, okay, it's time for me to find my pillow. Execute find pillow protocol. You actually just reach. Naturally, intuitively, without hesitation, you respond to the discomfort by bringing comfort. Compassion's like this. It's not some idea of heroism, and that's how it becomes heroic. It's not conceptual. It's not even moral in the way we normally think about morality. It's intimate. We could say it's reflexive, but that suggests that there's a self and other that are acting in unison. In a way, it's bringing about the unity of the spheres that's always present within us. It arises from the body or self, a body that we recognize to be so boundless and vast that it includes everything. I can tell you one place it doesn't emerge from. It doesn't emerge from the story that your mind is telling you. It's very tempting for us to collapse into that narrative, to collapse in some sort of idea that if we can just get the story right, if we can just pin the right badges on our lapel, have the right initials after our name, that somehow we'll be okay. But ultimately, our actions are a continuance. Yeah? So Ungan hears this, and I think he penetrates it quite well. Yeah? He says, I understand. All over the body are hands and eyes. He says, well, you have 80% of it. It's beautiful, and it's a deeper penetration than he's had in the past, but it's still incomplete. Ungan is still imagining a self who has hands and eyes, and who uses compassion as a kind of spiritual tool set. Dogo's listening, and he hears that subtle nuance, and he says, feels like about 80% to me. Yeah? It's 80%. So when Ungan turns to him and says, Elder Brother, how about you? And Dogo replies, throughout the body are hands and eyes. That difference is subtle. Yeah. But everything turns on it. All over the body means compassion as something we do, or an idea that we can subscribe to, and somehow put into use when it needs to be when we choose to. Throughout the body means compassion is our entire being. It's what life is. It's not applied or added. It's not a technique. It's the unobstructed functioning of your original nature when inside and outside disappear. There's a preface to the assembly in all the cases in the Shōyōroku. I think this one deepens it quite well. So you read these to see where is this case pointing, right? Just in case we get a little lost while we're going. But sometimes they themselves can also be pretty challenging in and of themselves. The preface is the 8 compass points bright and clear, the 10 directions unobstructed. Everywhere, bright light shakes the earth. All the time, there's marvelous functioning and the supernatural. Tell me, how can this occur? And then we go into the case. What does it mean for the 8 directions to be bright and clear? What does it mean that the 10 directions are unobstructed? Where is this pointing? Yeah. Ultimately, nothing is hidden. Nothing's outside the field of awareness. Nothing's excluded. When we're no longer tangled up in the story of I, the whole world becomes very transparent. Yeah. Everywhere we look, there is nothing but the activity of awakening. Everyone you engage with is the Buddha themselves. And they're not without, they're within. Bright light shakes the earth doesn't mean some sort of cosmic fireworks show. All of the time. I guess some of the time it does. Yeah. It means that when we see things as they are, without clinging, without aversion, the very ground of our life trembles with clarity. We recognize that everything we meet is an opportunity for compassion. And when we meet in that way, when we meet our lives and our lived experience that way, the marvelous functioning of the supernatural occurs. Yeah. In the Zen sense, supernatural doesn't mean magic tricks. It means getting out of that karmic trick bag that we've got ourselves locked in all the time. Yeah? The natural functioning of reality, we're not distorting it with some self-image. It's a spontaneous responsiveness that Dogen was pointing to. The arm reaching for the pillow. The heart responding to suffering before a single thought has formed. Marvelous functioning is your life. Your life when nothing's in the way. Particularly that idea you have about you. Yeah? When the 10 directions are open, when the hands and eyes of Avalokitesvara are simply how your very being expresses your own self. The appreciatory verse for the case points very well here. One whole penetrates space. 8 directions are clear and bright. Without forms, without self. Spring follows the rules. Unstopped, unhindered, the moon traverses the sky. Clean, pure, jeweled eyes and virtuous arms. Where's the approval in throughout the body instead of all over the body? Hands and eyes before you manifest complete functioning. The great function is everywhere. How could there be any hindrance? How could there be any hindrance indeed? One whole penetrates space. When the self drops away, there is no inside or outside. Nothing is sealed off. Everything functions and flows freely. Without form, without self, spring follows the rules. We're not caught in identity, some notion of how things are supposed to look or feel or be. Life unfolds naturally. And in that place, compassion moves without effort. Unstopped, unhindered, the moon traverses the sky. Awakening is not something that we need to pursue or find. It's something that's naturally generated through our practice intention. Something that's always happening. The moon doesn't need to consult your small self before it moves. Clean, pure, jeweled eyes and virtuous arms. All of you have these virtuous arms. Your eyes and arms when there's nothing in the way. When you see, when you appear, and when you step into your life and manifest as compassion. So where is the approval? Why is throughout the body instead of all over the body? Stressed. Like we said before. Because it's not a tool in your tool set. It's your very nature itself. Before your idea of it obstructs it. The great function is everywhere. There couldn't be any hindrance even if we wanted it. And when we recognize this, then we recognize that we're at home. We're at home in our lives just as they are. Not the life that we hope we'll have someday. Yeah? When we're sitting enough, or when we finish sewing our okesa. Yeah? We have it here right now. Yeah? When David is stomping around on the floor upstairs and we can't hear ourselves think. Yeah? Or that great barbaric yawp he gives when he's making his way from one activity to the next. Yeah. Each of you right here is a reflection of the whole universe. All of you shining brightly as you are. Each of you reflects that same gem or jewel, and yet each of you reflects it in a special way. The question for each of you becomes, what is that way? What is that way? What are your intentions? Yeah. How does the universe flow through this notion of what you call you? How are you going to spend this very real currency each of you is in possession of right now with your next breath? This currency that's your life. Yeah. I'll give each of you many koans over your training, but ultimately, this is your koan. This is the practice. Question becomes then, will you yield to it?